Another Arsenal game and another disappointing result. Guys, we're going to get into all of the details for the Arsenal Inter game now, while also covering some of the other games that have happened today. And so, yeah, the Arsenal game, again, as mentioned, a disappointing result off the back of the Newcastle defeat on the weekend. And from an Arsenal perspective, I think expectations coming into this game were high. Come out with a draw, a win potentially. Inter are no scrubs at all. They have done very, very well in Italy and European competitions over the last couple of years. And so the respect has to be had. And I think it was there in terms of how Arsenal set up, how they approached the game, the details of the game, which we can go through, and we'll take a look at the momentum. Is for large parts after the first 10 minutes, Arsenal were pretty much in control of the game. I wouldn't say dominating, but they were in control of the game. However, that control never really manifested itself into ultra clear-cut chances. And I think that's the problem. Arsenal were creating here and there little half chances, but nothing that was concrete. And so as they got to the stroke of half-time, a penalty was given for a Moreno handball, and Çalhanoğlu finished that away. He's got a brilliant record scoring penalties. And again, annoying, yes. However, that's football. You're not always going to get the rub of the green. Inter took their chance. It was a competitive game in the first half. I think Arsenal edged it maybe 65-35, 60-40. But Inter win the game, Arsenal win the game. It was competitive, and that moment swung it. It can be quite annoying for Arsenal fans because there was a moment where there was a punch, and that wasn't seen or adhered to in the same way as a handball, which was dubious, to say the least. But again, a team in Arsenal's position and what they've experienced this year already need to know that not anything is going to be handed to you. You're going to be in positions which are quite difficult. How are you going to respond from that? And in this game, I thought in the second half they responded pretty well. As you can see, from half-time onwards, they dominated the whole of the second half. So I'm not going to be here annoyed at the team's general performance and attitude. I think they wanted to win. They put forth a good effort. I think the application is where we have a little bit of an issue. The application of Arsenal's effort is the problem. And we're getting back into a period without Martin Odegaard where we're going back to this horseshoe play. And it's something that I've spoken about previously, something that I realised with Arsenal very early on in Mikel's progress, with how the positional play is set out. If there's nobody in those in-between places, in-between spaces to receive the ball and contribute with that link-up play where we've seen brilliantly with Martin Odegaard, who picks up those spaces, links up with a Saka, links up with a striker, Jesus, Havertz, and that's where you see those brilliant bits of play. But you need someone in those in-between spaces to stretch the lines, to find those gaps, and Arsenal don't have someone like that at the moment. Leandro Trossard, who's in that cam position, swapping with Kai Havertz, one of them playing the false nine, the other one playing a cam position, isn't working because Leandro Trossard wants to be on the end of everything. And as we've spoken about, Arsenal dominated large amounts of the game. However, again, I said it against Newcastle, game state. What's the game state? The game state from halftime onwards was, okay, into a what of the opinion of Arsenal, you can have as much of the ball as you want. We will look to counter when we get the opportunity. We trust our defence. It's solid. We held that Man City away from when we were away from home. We can do it against you, and that's exactly what they did. Same thing Newcastle said. We trust our defence. We know if you get too high up, we'll counter you. Have the ball, and can you break us down? And the answer on both occasions has been no. And again, this was something that in the summer we had spoken about. Arsenal need that X factor, whether it's a striker, whether it's a winger. They need that X factor, that person who's going to break teams down and can create something out of nothing. Going into the teams and the lineups again, Arsenal set up, as we probably would have expected them, the best back four to a degree. Timber, Gabriel, Saliba, White. I thought White played well at right back on misplaced passes, but he was adventurous in his passing. You can't complain about creativity and be annoyed at someone trying to, spark some creativity. Saliba was decent. Him and Gabriel, were fine. They dealt with majority of the threats that they had. Timber, I thought was good as well. Issue potentially from an attacking standpoint is obviously he's right-footed playing on the left, so he needs to come in, he needs to find those angles which is different. That's why we've heard murmurs of Zinchenko coming back into the lineup. He came on this game, I didn't really see much of a difference that he made, but that's something that we'll probably need to look at. If Calafiori is out for long, Timber is our best defensive fullback next to White. Against the tough teams, you probably want him there, but what do we lose attacking wise? It's all about balance. How can Arsenal facilitate that balance within the team? Saka, Partey, Moreno, and Martinelli in the midfield. I didn't think Saka was that bad. I think the worst of the four was Moreno. He was taken off at half time. He was poor. Giving away the balls where he should be strong in his duels, he wasn't strong. Thomas Partey, I think, was good as he has been all season. Would have preferred a lot more line breaking passes, but his passes are for those in the middle. And Kai Havertz is floating out on the wings, to the left, to the right. Trossard is nowhere to be seen in the middle as well. So there's no one to pass those balls to. You're just going to circulate it. And again, that's where you get the horseshoe play. Trossard and Havertz, again, the partnership which worked at periods last season, if you guys remember, and worked for a small period this season, isn't working now. I mean, and I think it was 4 short bursts and 4 certain opposition. For example, West Ham last season, I remember Trossard and Havertz working brilliantly together away from home, and we destroyed West Ham. But now against these tougher oppositions, you're not creating enough. You haven't got a focal point. We need that focal point back. Havertz went off injured last minutes of the game with a head injury, was bleeding pretty badly. We'll see how he is for the Chelsea game. We also had the reintroduction of Martin Odegaard, which was great. From an Inter side standpoint, I think they were solid, very solid team, very structured themselves really well. Martinez was poor, structured a little bit better. No one really stood out for me, to be honest with you. Sommer, I guess, was the most under pressure player from an Inter standpoint. But Arsenal had so much of the ball, it was hard for me to call out an Inter player who shined. Looking at the bench from the Inter side, again, no one really stood out. Inter didn't impose themselves at home. Arsenal let themselves, down to a degree in terms of conceding that goal and not having enough fight and ability to break down a team like Inter. But they're not the first and they won't be the last. We'll look at a couple more games in the Champions League, and then we'll look at the table as well. PSG lost at home to Atletico Madrid. A goal from Zaire Emery wasn't enough. A last-minute winner by Correa after a period of dominance. And PSG throughout the game, 71% possession, 22 shots, 3 big chances compared to 4 shots and 29% possession for Atletico Madrid. A Diego Simeone masterclass, as you would call it, an absolute masterclass. Annoying for PSG, but I'm sure they will see themselves forward in this competition. They've performed admirably well so far. Club Brugge versus Aston Villa. Aston Villa, again, were on the wrong end of a penalty decision this time. Quite funny and quite similar to something that happened to Arsenal last season against Bayern Munich at home. I think David Raya had kicked the ball to Gabriel on a goal kick. Gabriel picked it up and repositioned the ball, and Bayern were convinced they should have had a penalty. Well, the same thing happened here with Tyrone Mings for Aston Villa with Emi Martinez, and guess what? Club Brugge got the penalty and they put away the penalty. They made this game as competitive as they could. They continued to assert themselves in this game. It was one that I watched and I was actually quite impressed by their fight. It's not the first time, a couple of the other seasons that we've seen them in the Champions League, they always give a good account of themselves, or at least try to. And from Aston Villa, they were unbeaten in the Champions League up until this game. Unfortunate for them. It looks like if they can continue how they have started, they should see themselves through without needing to go through the playoffs, but there is still a lot to be decided. Next game we'll cover is Red Star versus Barcelona. It was at one point in this game was 1-1. Martinez, Barcelona and Red Star quickly equalised, but Barcelona quickly ran away with this game. Lewandowski double, Rafinha and a Lopez goal was enough to see Barcelona through, and that's 3 wins from 4 for Barcelona, which is very, very impressive, given that many, maybe including myself, thought they might struggle. But again, there's a lot of fixtures to come, and it will be very interesting to see how teams deal with that. And the final game we'll cover of all the games that happened from the Champions League is the Bayern Munich versus Benfica game. A game that Bayern Munich were expected to win, and that's exactly what they did. Dominated the game and finally got their breakthrough through with Musiala, who at the deadlock and gave Bayern Munich all 3 points, which they desperately needed. I'll quickly take a look at the table just for our benefit. Bayern Munich, who I mentioned needed that win, are now up to 17, 2 wins and 2 defeats. Arsenal, Inter currently sit 5th, unbeaten as well. Their draw against Man City and the win against Arsenal puts them in great stead. Arsenal, on the other hand, have 2 wins, 1 draw and 1 defeat. And there's still work for them to do. Similar record for Man City, Juventus, Atalanta. And I'm just going to look at one of the bigger games that is coming up, Liverpool versus Real Madrid. If Real Madrid were to lose this game, they would be in a very difficult position. I'm saying it's impossible, but very difficult. Sporting versus Arsenal being in the next game as well will be very interesting. Two teams who are on opposite ends. Sporting would have lost their manager as well. Very interesting to see. But guys, let me know your thoughts and opinions. Who's been your team of the Champions League so far? Who were you impressed with over this match week? I'll catch up with you guys soon. Peace. Too much talking.